Do you remember the first time that you tried to pray?
I said to God, I just said, I'm ready to believe. Like, I want to believe. If you exist, if you're really there, help me, because I can't do it on my own. But if you're there, like, now's the moment. Like, I need to know. I need to know if you're really, truly real.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Crab and the Cross podcast. I'm your host, Mary Rose, and today I have a real treat for you. This is my first ever interview with a nun, Mother Asterone Dodeka. She is a religious sister with the Servants of the Lord and the Virgin of Matera, and she sits down to share her incredible conversion story. She was essentially an atheist, became Catholic in high school, and then became a religious sister not long after college. She has a really beautiful story. I love conversion stories because I love hearing about the unique ways that God works in people's lives. I know that you're going to really enjoy this interview. You can show your love by sharing this with a friend, sharing it on social media, commenting on the YouTube channel, commenting on Instagram, or leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Also, this is episode number 11. That means that there is only one more episode left in season 1 of The Crab and the Cross. Don't worry, though, I have some really exciting things planned in between the end of season 1 and the start of season 2. You are definitely going to want to make sure you're following me on Instagram because there's going to be some giveaways. And make sure you're also subscribed to my YouTube channel because I will be dropping some short YouTube videos during the month of January. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Mother Asterone Dodeka. Mother Asterone Dodeka has been a member of the Sister Servants of the Lord and the Virgin of Matera for over 10 years. She is originally from Portland, Oregon, and she is a graduate of Mount St. Mary's University in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Currently, she teaches theology at the university and assists with liturgies for pilgrims to the Grotto. Sister, thank you so much for joining me today.
So glad to be here. Thanks, Mary Rose.
You're my first sister on the podcast,
Ooh.
so you have to represent all of religious life to the people.
Oh, you got a high order for me then.
Yeah. So we were talking before we started. Your religious name is very unfamiliar, both in language and even in meaning. So what does the name actually mean?
So my name is actually in Greek, and it's taken from the book of Revelation, chapter 12, where you have the woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. So my name is taken directly from the Greek there, Maria Asterone Dodeka, Mary of 12 stars.
Wow.
So whenever I introduce myself, I get to tell people what my name means and say, hey, it's all Greek to you.
Yeah. And I'm sure also for a lot of people, give them like a little biblical lesson because I don't think people are as familiar with that passage, especially relating to Mary.
Right, exactly. And it's beautiful because she does really represent the woman who, I guess you could say, bridges the Old Testament and the New Testament. So she represents the Jewish people as the mother of the 12 tribes of Israel. But then on the other hand, she's also the mother of the church, the mother of the 12 apostles, and then together with the kind of apocalyptic genre of the book of Revelation, she's the book of the last times, or the woman, the mother of the last times. So you get a lot of symbolism.
Yeah, that's cool. So do your fellow sisters call you something for short?
It's kind of fun. So our founder, when he founded us, he asked us to all take different Marian titles or names so that as we speak to one another in the house, it's kind of like a constant litany to Our Lady being offered up. So, of course, there becomes kind of shorthand versions. Right. Unfortunately, you can't really get my name too short. So
that's true.
Usually they just call me Asterone.
Asterone, yeah.
And then some of my classmates like to put a little spin on it and call me by my second half of the name when nobody else does. Yeah, exactly.
That's fun. Wow. Okay, so you're all the way from Portland, Oregon. How did you come to the East Coast? How did you end up at Mount St. Mary's?
Well, I came to the Mount primarily to play softball.
Oh, okay.
So growing up, I was an avid softball player, competitive softball. All my summers, my whole life was softball. I had a conversion in high school, and that kind of shifted my ideals for life, I guess you could say, and kind of what some of my goals were. But I couldn't quite let go of Division I softball.
Yeah.
So I started looking for a Catholic school that was Division I and small liberal arts, which really Catholic Division I, liberal arts, small.
Narrows it down to like one.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of how I made it to the Mount.
Wow. So did you go to Catholic high school?
No, I went to a public high school, but I became Catholic my senior year of high school.
Wow. Were you anything before?
No. I guess I would say probably I was pretty adamantly atheist.
Wow.
We had no faith tradition growing up.
So your family, your parents were not any religion whatsoever?
Mm-mm.
Did you celebrate like Christmas and all that?
In the good old pagan way.
Right. Of course, like any American.
Yeah, exactly. Plenty of gifts and Santa Claus and cookies and
of course.
Milk and, all of the things.
Yeah. Would you say like in your household there was an anti-religious sentiment, or it just was not really important?
I wouldn't quite go so far as anti, although when I was in high school and when I was having my conversion, I kind of felt like it was anti-Christian. My parents both grew up in North Portland, in a single parent household with lots of siblings, very poor. And when they got married, their main family value, or the main value, was family. And so for them, and that's a beautiful family.
Of course, yeah.
Beautiful value. So definitely I'm very thankful and grateful to my parents for the way they've raised me. But the emphasis on the family was to the point of saying, like, all we need is the family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, all you need to be okay in life is like a good family relationship. And so there was a lot of like kind of scoffing at others, and kind of this idea of like religion is a crutch for those who are too weak to really be able to handle life, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever seen the show Portlandia?
Keep Portland weird.
Yeah. I mean, you just I've never been to Portland, but you just have this idea that it's like a very secular town, pretty progressive, just more so into culture, like, culture that's music or food or whatever. Sure, and it's just not, you don't just think of like Christian family values when you think of like Portland, Oregon.
No, by no means. By no means.
Yeah. So how did you encounter the Catholic Church?
Well, in high school, I had a number of Christian friends. So actually, by the time I got into high school, I had moved across the river and I was in Camas, Washington. Okay. So slightly different culture there, I would say. But still pretty secular. The Northwest is pretty secular in general. But in the particular high school that I was in the band, the high school band, and there were a lot of Christians in the band. So that was kind of like the hub of the... There were Mormons, there were Catholics, there were Protestants, there were kind of everything. So my first introduction was basically through my friends, where I was like, whoa, who are you?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
Praying, going to church.
Yeah,
what
exactly.
Is this?
Youth group. Like, they're inviting me to things. I'm like, you guys are crazy.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah, I had a friend in high school. I went to Catholic high school, but I had a friend who her parents are from Canada. They were pretty secular, and she wasn't really raised in any religion. And I think it was always kind of an anomaly for her. And it's hard for me to like put myself in that context, because I was just born, raised Catholic, and been in a relatively Catholic environment. And so it's interesting to hear what people's like perception of religion is, especially Christianity, from the complete outside, Yeah.
And really, for me, I saw my friends and I was like, you guys are brainwashed.
Really?
That was like my first impression of them. I'm like, you guys are brainwashed. You've just drank the Kool-Aid that mom and dad have told you. Right. And you don't know anything about the real world. Not that I knew anything about the real world either, but it was easy to say that about somebody else.
Of course. Wow. So did you start off then going to more like Protestant churches?
I didn't actually accept any of their offers.
Oh, okay.
To be honest.
Okay.
They would invite me, but I wouldn't really accept. But hanging out with them, I don't know why they stayed friends with me, because really a lot of our conversations turned into debates about the existence of God,
Oh, wow.
the purpose of religion, some of the moral issues that are important to Christians, and we would debate about them.
Yeah.
And frankly, I was a better debater than they were, so I would crush them pretty well.
Yeah, of course.
You know, but they were patient with me, and they continued to be friends with me more than anything. I think that was like the biggest witness that they had, was they didn't just let me go off the wayside because I was atheist.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's like a good lesson for people who are like maybe even more specifically in the work of evangelization, or if they are like hoping and praying for the conversion of a family member or friend, is that like, you know, that like steady patience is probably going to bear more fruit than like a really, really good argument.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because unless somebody's really searching for the truth when you're dialoguing with them, you can be the best debater in the whole wide world. Yeah. And it's not gonna touch them.
Right. Right.
But your witness of life will.
Absolutely.
Your witness of life will. And your consistency of life, coherency with what you believe and what you profess to believe, that will cause them to ask some questions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So was there a time in high school when you started kind of taking the initiative then in like this religious quest?
I think more than anything, well, you know, they talk about these existential crises, right?
Oh, yeah. I have one like every day.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It doesn't go away when you become Catholic.
Nope, does not. But in high school, so I started to struggle a little bit with trying to bring in my beliefs with how I was living my life. And that brought in a couple of paradoxes or contradictions that I was not so comfortable with. And I had to kind of ask some questions. So one of them was, I mean, my parents had taught me a lot of really good natural values, but then at the same time, the only purpose in life was success.
Yeah.
And not success in a super worldly way, like successful family, a successful job, but success was like the purpose that we were all aiming to. So you're in honors, you're doing varsity sports, you know, everything. It's all like, okay, the next prize that you can win, right? Everything's oriented in that direction. But I started to realize, like, if that's the goal, why am I doing it in a good way? Or like in a virtuous way? If success is like the whole purpose.
Oh, right. Like, why don't you just do what you can to get to the top?
Yeah, exactly. Why? So why be good?
Right.
Why be good if there's no, so I could see that like I wanted to be a good person.
Yeah.
But I had no reason for it. No like final end to it, like purpose for it. So I think that was one thing. And then the other kind of contradiction that I would feel often is each time that I would achieve something new, of course there'd be like that excitement and that happiness that comes with those types of achievements, but immediately it would disappoint. And it would kind of like leave me super empty inside.
Wow. And
that was hard to kind of deal with. Like, okay, so if that's my goal, like if it's just going from success to achievement to success to achievement,
right,
and nothing brings a lasting happiness, ooh,
yeah,
that's hard.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it just is like it's the rat race. It's the hamster wheel. It's,
exactly.
You know, you get the prize, and then immediately you have to get the next prize. And you know, I think there's probably a lot of people who aren't able to be conscious of that. You know, maybe they kind of subconsciously they feel this dissatisfaction, but I think especially to be in high school and be able to put your finger on it and be like, this isn't making sense, this isn't adding up.
Right. And I think that's where also the witness of my friends came in, because they, well, I wouldn't say not, some of them were also like on this success road.
Sure.
Who isn't on that's our part of our culture, right? That's what they tell us in high school and in college and young adulthood. And then all of a sudden you become old and you're like, what was that all about? But my friends, they had a happiness and a joy that sustained through the ups and downs of the external success, achievement, failure, etc. there was something in them that I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I wanted it. And that's, I think, like really the moment where things started to change for me, because I was able to kind of say, oh, instead of my friends being ignorant and stupid and brainwashed, I started to say, oh, well, maybe ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
So I actually started to get kind of like a little jealousy of them, because I was like, man, at least had I been born in a Christian household, I could have been, brainwashed into this, but at least I'd be happy. I wouldn't have the truth, but I would be happy.
Wow.
I wouldn't have to deal with the harsh reality of there being no purpose in life.
Yeah, right. I mean, what do your friends say, kind of those platitudes of like, God has a plan and everything happens for a reason?
I think they knew better than to say those things to me. Yeah. But they lived it.
Yeah, for sure.
They definitely lived it. And it's not to say they didn't struggle. And it's interesting to look back now and talk with some of my friends, because they really did struggle with their faith, like any high schooler does, as they start to own their faith from being brought up in a practicing family or something like that. But from the outside, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I saw the solidity of their faith and the beauty of what they had.
Yeah.
Which I think is a beautiful point for all of us. Like when we do start to struggle a little bit with our faith, we start to think that, oh no, everything's over. But the faith is a lot stronger than we think it is sometimes.
Yeah. And it's not something that just we hold individually. Like,
exactly.
It's something that the church holds and has held throughout time. And like, it's not only like if your faith is wavering, like there's faith of others that can kind of bolster you.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So do you remember the first time that you tried to pray?
Yes. That was kind of the moment, I would say the moment of my conversion and the moment of my religious vocation also all together in one. Yeah. Talk about a life changer. But one of my friends, they had started challenging me to read the Bible. Mm-hmm. So this was the first like invitation challenge that I kind of accepted. And to be honest, I don't even remember what it was I was reading, or and it wasn't the first day I was reading. I don't know. It was like, a couple weeks into it. I'm sure I was in the New Testament somewhere. And this was junior year of high school. So for those who are familiar with competitive sports, this is the time that you're signing for colleges, for Division I colleges. So I had just been offered Louisiana State University.
Oh, wow.
Which for the softball players, like that's like the top of the top. They
really?
Always go to the championship tournaments for the Division I. It's like your dream.
Yeah.
So I knew I didn't want to go there. But the fact that I received an offer to go there was just like, whoa, so awesome. But like I said, it was like such a fleeting joy, and I knew it wasn't going to last. And so I think it was even that evening that I was up in my room and I had been reading, and I tossed the Bible across the floor because I was just like, I can't handle this anymore. But I was filled with so many questions and so much doubt and so much longing and existential crisis, right? Like you're just like in that moment. And I knelt down at my bed, because of course you have to kneel to pray. That's
of course,
the only thing
and fold your hands.
Exactly right. But I prayed, and I prayed very authentically, like from the heart. I've never been taught to pray, so there was no way to do like some formula prayer or anything like that. But I said to God, I just said, I'm ready to believe. Like I want to believe. If you exist, if you're really there, help me, because I can't do it on my own. But if you're there, like now's the moment. Like I need to know if you're really truly real.
Yeah.
And God answers those types of prayers.
Yeah.
When we speak from the heart, he really does. And in a moment, in an instant, I knew in the depths of my heart, in the depths of my being, that God existed, that he loved me, and that I belonged entirely to him.
Wow.
And not a feeling, I don't know how to put words to it. It was in the depths of my heart. in the depths of my soul. These were,
Wow.
yeah.
Huh. Did you feel at that moment too that you knew that this God also became man in Jesus Christ?
I think about that a lot now because I teach classes on Revelation. I teach classes on De Verbo Incarnado, like on Christ, the incarnate word, and think to myself, how in the world did I come to faith in Christ?
Right.
But I think it was part of the package. I don't remember there being like a specific, like I said, those kind of 3 points were the ones that like I felt and knew very deeply. But it never was a question to me that Jesus wasn't God.
Huh. Yeah, that's so fascinating. Wow. Was this an emotional experience for you?
I had an emotional response to it.
Yeah,
I would definitely say. For me, I don't think the experience itself, I wouldn't call it emotional so much as really in the depths, feeling this in the depths of my being. But when I kind of came to realize what was going on, I was like, whoa, talk about like my whole life is totally changed. Yeah. Everything is totally changed. And that brought about a lot of different struggles. I mean, I had to be able to now come to terms with my family and the beliefs that my family had. I had to come to terms with, okay, what does this mean for my life now? Where do I go from here? Which church do I go to? Yeah. Where do I find more truth? Like, you've given me something, but there's a lot more to come. Where do I go from here?
Right. So did you feel like you were led then on just a straight path to the Catholic Church, or was it kind of a windy road?
It was a little windy. So I had a great love and desire for truth. Yeah. And I think that was instilled from my youth, from my parents. And I'm very grateful for that gift because many in our culture do not understand and love the truth. Right. So I was convinced that there was one truth about God and that there was one church that had the truth about God. Unfortunately, I went for a little bit down the road of Mormonism.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating. Which, I mean, it's understandable just based on the region you were in and based on just, I think, the evangelicalism of the Mormon church.
Yes, exactly.
They got you.
Right, and that was most of my friend group. Most of them were Mormons. I had a couple of Catholic friends and then a couple of Protestant friends. But the Protestant, friends, they didn't get me. They didn't have much to kind of argue with. Okay. But the Mormon church and the Catholic church are, I would say, the two mainstream that have claims to having some sort of like fullness of truth. Yeah. So obviously, like the Protestants, each of them is like there's a break, there's a Reformation, there's a right. The Mormon church, for those who don't know, they kind of believe that after the death of the last of apostles, the church kind of fell into apostasy for a period of time until I guess it was like the 1700s, 1800s that Joseph Smith received a revelation. The fullness of truth is brought back. But they teach with that type of authority, right? Like, so they claim that type of authority of like being the fullness of truth of the Church of Jesus Christ. Some of the things were crazy, but I was like, man, 10 days ago, I thought all of Christianity was crazy. Sure. So whatever's crazy is crazy. And
yeah. But they were recommending to you the Bible. They weren't saying, oh, you need to read the Book of Mormon. And
can you believe it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess praise God, right?
Yeah. Right.
Huh. Okay. So were you allowed to go to a Mormon church despite not being Mormon?
So you can go to their Sunday services. Okay. But to go to the temple, which would be kind of like for bigger types of religious celebrations, I don't know, you would have to be a member.
Okay.
To go.
And that's like a completely separate building, like the temple versus the church?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, because I've known people who've been invited to Mormon weddings and they go, but they can't go.
Yeah, exactly.
Inside.
Yeah, they can't go inside, right?
Like, oh man, that's so strange.
Yeah. No, for their Sunday services, I could go. I would sneak off from my family so they wouldn't know where I was. And they have like a catechism structure. They call it seminary for their high school for their high schoolers, and that takes place every day before school.
Wow.
So they go early morning, have a 0 period
Uh-huh.
at their church for religion class, and then they go to school afterwards. So
Wow.
I would get up early and go to their religion class in the morning to kind of learn some more about that, and then go off to school, all without my parents knowing, of course.
Oh my gosh. That's actually really fascinating to me, because I think in the Catholic Church, we're always trying to make things as accessible to the youth as possible.
Right.
And like, we would never do CCD early in the morning.
6:30 in the morning?
Never.
No, never.
You know, and I mean, partly like, I'm sure most parents don't want to like get their kids up early and drive them and all that stuff. But I mean, that's just kind of remarkable on a human level that you had these teenagers going to their religion class in the morning before. Like, okay, because I taught high school theology and I mostly taught seniors. And good luck getting them there for first period.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, that's actually kind of impressive.
I really do admire, honestly, the way that the formation works in the Mormon church, and and there is this like desire on their behalf to really form well their children and their youth. And then most young adults are expected to go on a mission trip.
Right.
So at least all the males are expected to go on a mission trip after they finish high school, and sometimes the females as well. So there's like a high standard, and I could tell the difference of those of my friends that were Mormon, how they owned their faith, because there were sacrifices they put in for their faith. And so there was something of it that was theirs.
Right. Yeah. Was there a moment where you just became kind of dissatisfied with their theology or with their practice?
I think the whole time I was a little dissatisfied.
Yeah.
But again, I was I guess I was actually kind of falling into some of the Protestant fideism, because I figured to myself, okay, it doesn't really make sense. There's not like a beauty between the truths that like attracts. But if this is the truth, then this is what I got to go with, right? Like, if this is how God says it is, then here we go. But and so then at that point, I started debating with my Catholic friend. So we started doing a lot of debates back and forth between Mormon Church, Catholic Church, doctrines, etc. So I started to get familiar with Catholic doctrine through that. But I think like the really changing moment was when my Catholic friend started freaking out that I was really becoming Mormon.
Wow.
Really freaking out that I was becoming Mormon. And she's like, okay, you have to come to Mass with me at least once. Like, you just give this a consideration, basically. And she laughs about it now, because she's like, I mean, I would have given anything for you just to become Christian. And then when you had your conversion, I should have been happy. Right. But the fact that you were going down the Mormon path, like, totally threw me for a loop. Like, had you become Protestant or something like that, no problem. But the fact that you're becoming Mormon, she said, I just couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Well, and they're not, I don't know if I'd quite call them Christian.
Right.
Because they don't believe in the Trinity, right, in the same way.
So, theologically, if we're going to make the distinction, I don't think we could quite call them, they don't share the Trinitarian faith. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, in a way, they're almost more like Islam, where they also believe in Christ, just not, I don't know, do Mormons believe in the divinity of Christ? They can if they're not Trinitarian, right?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. But I think, honestly, if you like talk to your everyday Mormon, they do have a faith in Christ. So despite what their like official doctrine is, and like, but I think your everyday practicing Mormon has a true faith in Christ. Yeah. Despite the way that the doctrines are formulated in the church. Okay. Yeah. So that's why it's a little like funky. I always get a little nervous to say, okay, well, Mormons aren't Christian. I was like, okay, well, technically no, because of their doctrines, and their baptism is not Trinitarian, so that's a problem too. But at the same time, like the individual faith of many members, I do think has a,
like, they would pray to Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you go to your first Catholic Mass.
So. This is so funny and ironic.
I'm just like, oh, was it a good Catholic
Mass? I know, right? What happened? So, first of all, 2 friends end up taking me, and one of them is now a Poor Clare sister in California. My goodness. So you kind of have that going already. And they get me in the car, and they say, so actually, we're going to take you to a Maronite liturgy. Wow. So my first Mass wasn't even in the Roman Rite.
Wow.
It was in the Maronite Rite, which maybe was a good thing because it had, the incense and the beauty and the, right, like a lot of the elements that sometimes we lose in your everyday neighborhood parish Mass sometimes.
Yeah,
but anyway, that's a different type of topic, but the beauty in the liturgy. So we go, and then they tell me, oh, and also, just so you know, we're getting there about half an hour early, and there's Eucharistic adoration taking place. And I was like, okay. I knew what Catholics believed about Jesus and the Eucharist. So they gave me a little explanation of like what was adoration, exposition of the Blessed Sacrament, a moment to be able to pray in front of Jesus in the Eucharist. And I said, okay, well, great. So we get there. Abuna, they call their priest Abuna, which means father.
I didn't know that.
In Aramaic, I think. Perhaps it could be.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think it's in Aramaic, Abuna.
Maronite, they're the Lebanese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know their liturgies, they actually speak in Aramaic for the consecration.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of beautiful. Anyway, so Father Abuna goes and he exposes the Blessed Sacrament, and there's bells and there's incense and there's candles and there's this kind of Eastern singing going on. It's kind of like a mystical experience,
sure.
You know what I mean? Especially for someone who's never been to any sort of real religious liturgy. The Mormons don't really have a liturgy. So I had been to some of their services, but it's not a liturgy, properly speaking. So that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That was pretty impressive. But I was kneeling in the church because I was like, well, I'm going to pray. I'm not going to pray to that thing, but I'm going to pray.
Yeah.
And again, I these are the types of graces where we see so clearly, like it's God's work and not our work. Like it's not what we do or what we're trying to do that saves us. No, it's like it's really the free gift of God. Because I was there praying in front of our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament, and I couldn't keep my eyes off of him. Even though I hadn't made an act of faith, I didn't believe that this was Jesus, but I just kind of kept thinking over to myself, wow, like these people think this is Jesus, and they're acting like this is Jesus, and they're praying to him like this is Jesus. And for some reason, the words of the gospel story, when Jesus is going to heal, I think it's the synagogue official's child.
Oh yeah.
No, it's the Roman official. It's the Roman official. He asked Jesus to come heal one of his servants who's sick, and Jesus says, "Okay, I'm going to come down," right? And he says, "No, just say the word," right? And Jesus praises his faith, and I might be getting my stories mixed up, but anyway, there's one of the healing stories where then the man says, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." Lord, I believe, I help my unbelief. I don't know how that came to me in that moment,
right?
But I started praying that prayer to Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament.
Wow.
And praying that prayer, which was a grace itself, because I there was no way that I came up with that on my own. Again, I received that grace of belief. Belief in our Lord's presence right there in the Blessed Sacrament.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by like conversion stories, because some people have a story, and I think this is often more the case with people who are Protestant, where it's like research and reading the church fathers and reading scripture and study, and then finally they're like, oh my gosh, it all lines up, you know? And like you have not really any faith background, and it's, you know, as soon as you really utter an honest prayer, and then as soon as you're in front of the Blessed Sacrament for the first time, like it just comes. Yeah.
I think it's because our Lord knows he needs to be that upfront with me, because otherwise I would go off in whatever direction.
Yeah, but it is beautiful, because I think, you know, the temptation maybe if you're somebody who studied your way into the faith is that you kind of can feel like, oh, I figured it out. Like, you know, right. I'm like the detective, and I've put all the pieces together, and it doesn't feel as much like a gift. Maybe maybe I'm projecting that onto somebody, but I like the simplicity of the way your story is.
Mm-hmm. And really, at the end of the day, we can't believe just because we understand something.
Yeah.
Because then that's us, and that's a very human act.
Yeah, I actually I learned that very recently. Like as I was preparing for my comprehensive exams, there was these study sessions, and one of the professors leading it, he was talking about the nature of faith and how if you only believe because it makes sense to you and you understand it, that's not actually supernatural faith.
Right, exactly,
you know?
exactly.
And it makes sense, but I'd never thought about that before, because I think for a lot of people, especially Catholics who you're raised in the faith, but then you sort of question it, the more you study, you're like, oh, this does make sense. I can believe this. But if it's only ever your rational analysis of it, then it's not totally faith.
Exactly. It's still in the human modality, we could say. Like, it's not, we haven't allowed ourselves to be making supernatural acts of faith in the way that God wants to give us to live his life.
Right. And it doesn't mean that an act of faith, is irrational.
Right.
It's just you have to get to a moment where you're like, I actually don't understand anything, which is great. And I felt, the more I study theology, the more I'm like, I have no idea. Yeah.
Well, and if you look to many of the mystics that we look to, the teachers of the faith, St. John of the Cross, St. Teresa of Avila, St. Therese of the Child Jesus, Mother Teresa, all of these saints experienced a great darkness of faith.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where our Lord stripped them of their understanding of the faith, where they couldn't perceive that they understood.
Right.
But they believed and they loved anyway.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think most people, even if you don't experience that profound extended period of dark night of the soul, I think any experience of suffering, you're just like, do I actually believe this?
Right.
And then you can look at the crucifix and you could be, okay, God has come to suffer with me and for me, but it still doesn't make sense. I can't explain why this happened and why God allowed this and what he's doing here. And any experience of suffering, you just come face to face with the insufficiency of your reason.
Yep, exactly. And that's where the true act of faith starts to come.
Yeah, absolutely. So you go to this Maronite liturgy and are you just hooked from then on? You're just like, Catholicism, let's go.
Pretty much. I turned to my friend right before Mass time. I was like, I gotta be Catholic.
Wow.
Can you imagine her perspective of that? Like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah, but I love, because I was telling you, I work in college campus ministry, and it's very easy to overthink your approach to somebody. You're like, well, how do I make this so that they want to come? And it just, with all your friends, it was just a simple invitation. Come to adoration.
Yep.
Come to Mass. Read the Bible. That's easy. That's just 3 words, 2 words.
And to think about, I was pretty against them at the beginning. I was pretty adamantly atheist, and so for them to have the courage to make those simple invitations, I think is also pretty important for us to learn from. And what I've definitely learned from is that just because somebody professes something that you don't believe, I think in our culture we have we walk the line,
Yeah.
So let's just not talk about these types of things, but make the invitation.
Right.
The worst they say is no. The worst they do is ridicule you, the way that I did to my friends.
Right.
But somehow they still persevered in friendship. And it wasn't like they were inviting me every other day or every other week or something like that. But it was an invitation and then continue with friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So how soon after that did you enter RCIA?
Okay, so I would have been in my junior year of high school with that kind of experience. I wanted to join RCIA that year. I finally told my parents about my experiences that I had been having, which I hadn't really been wanting to do.
How did that go?
At the time, it felt like the end of the world.
Yeah. You mean to them or to you or both?
To me, to them. I think it was very difficult because we were very close. Yeah. And we are close still, thanks be to God. But at the time, yeah, it was very difficult. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself because I was looking at the way that I was raised, and I was looking at some of the way that my parents had spoken about religious people and things like that. And I was starting to make some conclusions that I don't think were fair to them, weren't necessarily what they really believed or thought of religion and people. So I got really nervous to tell them. And so I did tell them, and it's not like they threw me out of the house,
Right.
Nothing like that. But they, I think they felt hurt, and that in some way I was rejecting the way that they had raised me.
Oh, wow.
And again, I don't think any of these things were necessarily spoken, but I think it's just what everybody felt.
Right.
So anyway, they were also a little bit worried that I was just being carried away by friends and things like that. So they wanted to make sure that I was really making an adult decision about this. And so they asked me to wait a year.
Wow.
Until I turned 18.
Yeah.
That was a really hard year.
Yeah.
That was a really hard year.
Wow.
And I didn't really understand at the time. I couldn't understand. So I think at the time I took that as they're against what I'm trying to do. Looking back now as an adult, I can kind of see, I think they were trying to protect me. They were trying to still look for my good. They weren't necessarily against me becoming Catholic so much as they were against me making a rash decision based off of what my friends believe or think or something like that. Influence of friends, I guess.
Right. Yeah, which, I mean, I think I can respect that. And for something that was so unfamiliar to them, it is, I mean, all the time people come home from high school and they're like, I want to do this, I want to do that, and you're like,
right.
Your parents like, well, if so-and-so jumped off the bridge.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I can, I mean, and there are religious groups out there that have kind of almost predatory tactics where they kind of suck you in.
Right.
And, I think, that's maybe there was some wisdom. And it certainly had to test your very nascent faith.
Yes, exactly. And really, I think that developed a beautiful love for our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament, because desire begets love, a deep burning of love. And so I had a desire to receive our Lord in Holy Communion, but I couldn't.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'd sneak off to the daily masses before school or on a day if we had a late start or something like that, and get up to the front row in the pew, because you're like, okay, I can't receive him, but at least I can be as close to him as possible.
Right. Yeah. Actually, let me ask you this, because, we know that, one of the most, I mean, all the commandments are important, but one of the commandments is honor your father and mother. And that always means, like, unless your father and mother are telling you to do something that is sinful or whatever.
Right.
And in your case, your parents are really asking you to honor them in not becoming Catholic, or in waiting to become Catholic. So I wonder, do you think if you had sort of like disobeyed them and behind their back, like gone through RCIA, do you think that would have been a legitimate sort of breaking of that commandment? Or you think that would have been, disobedient?
Right. It's tricky.
Yeah.
That's a tricky one.
And I don't know, because it doesn't sound like they were hostile. They're like, we're gonna, beat you every time you pray or something.
Right. No, by no means. No. In the end, I look back and I'm like, actually, you were pretty good to me.
Yeah.
We definitely had consulted the parish priest.
Oh, okay.
As to whether I could start RCIA my junior year when I was still 17, and he took some time to kind of pray about it and look at that, like all the components of the situation. Yeah. And he concluded that for two reasons. One, to respect my parents and not to create an unnecessary division and kind of further their alienation from the faith, which I think certainly would have happened had he supported me coming into the church right away.
Yeah.
And then also, and this I think also kind of wise, realizing that I have very little formation. To use that year as like another year of preparation. So even though I wasn't in RCIA proper, he would give me different books to read. Okay. I was receiving formation during that time. Yeah. So in the end, I think I don't want to make any sort of like moral decision.
But it's good that it wasn't just you. Like you had this counselor essentially to also look at the situation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I'm really grateful too, because we don't always realize how relationships can be hurt and broken from those types of decisions. Like, okay, from a rash high school perspective, of course, I just want to go and get baptized and do what I need to do with my life. But I look back now and I see how that could have really damaged my relationship with my family had I totally spurned them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as though they weren't letting me go to mass. It wasn't as though they weren't letting me go to some of the youth group things. It wasn't as though they were preventing.
Yeah. I mean, you're still essentially in a way practicing the faith. You're just not in the sacramental life.
Right,
you know?
right. Which that itself is a danger. Like, okay,
sure,
I need to receive sanctifying grace.
Right.
But yeah, complicated.
Yeah.
But I think in that situation, well, anyway, we'll find out in heaven.
right. It looks like it didn't, damage you too much. So did they end up coming to your baptism and all of that?
They did, actually,
Yeah.
which was really, really a great blessing. They were like, what? It starts at 11?
That's right, because Easter Vigil, yeah.
And they'd never been to a mass before, so their first mass is this Easter Vigil.
Oh my goodness.
God bless them.
Wow. But they were pretty, I guess relatively supportive,
Yeah. My parents are good. Like they want me to, like most parents, right? Like they want their child to be happy, and they want their child to do something that's meaningful. And this was both of these things.
Sure.
And it wasn't what they expected. It wasn't what they envisioned. It's not what they would have chosen. But nevertheless, they were supportive in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
My vocation, not as much.
Okay. Okay, so you do the sacraments senior year, you're Catholic, you're looking at a Catholic college, so you end up at Mount St. Mary's. How was your college experience? Did you like it there?
Loved it.
Yeah?
Yeah, loved the Mount. Newborn Catholic, you show up at a college that was founded in 1808. It has a seminary on campus, so you have 150 seminarians that are walking around and clerics. You have religious statues. There's like 6 different chapels on campus that you can go to. There's daily mass. I mean, I was like in Catholic heaven,
Yeah. Was it? I mean, did you play softball all 4 years there?
No. So in the end, I only played my freshman year.
Really?
At the Mount, partially because of the issue of faith.
That's what I was wondering, because I think sometimes, unfortunately, on sports teams, the culture can be kind of hostile.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, I look back now a little bit, and I think I could have been a little bit more compassionate towards my teammates and things like that. But I was a newborn Catholic, and I was really excited for the faith. These were mostly Catholic women who had grown up in Catholic school, had gone to Catholic high school, but we're no longer attending mass. We're partying, the whole culture, the whole college culture. And so that was hard. And then also, I mean, I was realizing that softball wasn't my life anymore, because before it had been, like, that had been everything. And now it wasn't. And it was hard. It was hard to be able to go to daily mass, because you'd have early morning workouts, and then you'd go to classes, and then you would have practice, and then you would have mandatory study hall, and it was like your whole life was that team, and it wasn't fulfilling anything anymore.
Yeah.
So that was one of the aspects. And then I think the other aspect that helped me decide not to play anymore was really recognizing my vocation to the consecrated life.
Wow.
And realizing that I needed to do something about how much loans I was going to get by the end of college.
Oh, but you weren't getting like a scholarship for softball?
I had a 3/4 scholarship.
Okay.
But private Catholic universities, that still leaves you with like $15,000 a year that you're paying.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're at a $60,000, $70,000 a year tuition program.
Right.
So I did have a good scholarship, but what I realized is that I was able to shave off a whole year of college studies if I dropped softball and took extra classes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I graduated in 3 years from the
Okay.
Mount, which ended up saving.
Yeah.
In the end, like calculation wise, it ended up saving more money than had I kept my softball scholarship and played all 4 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So by the time you were a freshman in college, like you knew that you had a religious vocation?
I would say more towards like, the end of my freshman year. Honestly, I think I knew from that moment of my initial conversion.
And did you know what nuns were?
No, yeah, exactly. So that's like where it's like kind of funny, but like I knew that I belonged totally to God.
Yeah.
That he had claimed me in some way and that my heart was his. I didn't know what that meant, but I think intuitively I knew that meant not a human marriage. Of course, I had no idea what that looked like in the life of the church or anything like that. But when I was going through RCIA, one of the friends who had brought me to Mass and adoration, I told you she had become a Poor Clare, right? She's a Poor Clare now. Well, she was 1 year older than me. So she had graduated and entered the Poor Clares my senior year of high school.
Wow, right out of high school.
Right out of high school.
Wow.
Yep. She's still there. She's still there. God bless her.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I know. Can you? Yeah.
I mean, that's a grace to be 18 and.
Yep. Leave it all behind.
Yeah.
4 walls. Wow. Northern California.
Have you ever, I mean, I guess, yeah, can you visit her? Have you ever gotten to see her?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Someday it's going to happen because she's in Northern California and we have a mission in Northern California.
Okay.
I'm jumping really far ahead, but when I wrote to her, we stayed pen pals.
Okay.
And when I wrote to her telling her that I was going to enter, I was like, okay, I'm entering this like missionary order that was founded in Argentina. We're all over the world. There's no way she's ever going to know who we are. Okay, no problem. I'm just going to tell her that I'm entering. And I got a letter back from her. She was like, your sisters come for retreat day every month. I was like, stop it. That's too much.
Wow.
So someday if I get out to our mission in California to be able to visit, for sure I'll be able to have an opportunity to see her.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did you find out about your religious order? Because you said they weren't at the Mount at the time you were there.
Correct. Yeah, they weren't at the Mount. Well, honestly, when I got to the Mount, I started studying philosophy.
Okay.
Which I guess is not too much of a surprise if I was asking all those questions in high school and thinking about these deeper life issues in high school. So I majored in philosophy, and I'm not really sure why I told you that, but that's okay. Anyway.
No, that's great.
Majored in
That's
philosophy.
the way to do it.
Oh, yeah, this is why. Because I discovered St. Thomas Aquinas through my study of philosophy.
Okay.
So I started really loving Thomistic philosophy, throwing myself into the studies of St. Thomas. And once I was kind of realizing my vocation, I said, okay, well, I guess that means I have to be a Dominican. Because if I love St. Thomas and I love philosophy and I'm going to be a religious, A plus B equals C, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Connect the dots. So I kept looking for an opportunity to get out to Nashville or Ann Arbor, where there's 2 different orders of Dominican sisters, and just never worked out. I was never able to get out there. One of the summers that I stayed on campus to work and to study, there was a vocations retreat that took place on campus for high school girls. And in this type of retreat, they bring in a bunch of different religious orders. So I was on campus. I wasn't in high school, but I was on campus. So I went over for the retreat, the parts of the retreat that I could participate in.
Yeah.
And the Dominicans were there. So I was super excited. I finally got to kind of talk with some of them. And they gave me their vocations director's number and things like that. And also the Servidora sisters were there. So met these sisters in blue and gray. And I enjoyed talking with the sister that I met. And we hung out quite a bit. And afterwards, she was like, hey, well, you're on campus all summer, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, are you doing anything? And I was like, no, it's Emmitsburg. Like, what is there to do in a normal school year?
Right.
There's nothing to do during the summer.
Yeah. You can't even ski. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can't do anything. She's like, well, come down for pizza on Friday night and hang out with us or something like that. I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds like fun. So I borrowed a car and I went down and I visited the sisters, and it's just really funny because I had no intention of discerning with our religious family at all. I just I had no initial attraction or anything like that. It was more like, I'm a college student. I'm bored.
Right.
Yeah, I want to hang out with nuns.
Yeah. And there's pizza involved.
And I get off campus for a little bit, and I enjoyed my time with them. I really enjoyed praying with them. I enjoyed, we had we played games after pizza, and then the next morning they had me help with a project that they were doing in the house.
Did you stay the night there?
I stayed the night.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
They let me stay the night, which I was grateful for because it's an hour and a half from the mountain.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so they had me help with a project. They were putting new bookshelves into the library, and I was working with the sister who's in charge of the studies for the formation sisters, and she was the one who was organizing the library and things like that. And she's like, okay, so these are the books of St. Thomas, and here are the commentaries on St. Thomas and the St. Thomas and the St. Thomas. And I was like, oh, you study St. Thomas?
That's so cool.
And the timing, right? It had to be right then. And I had to be with that sister who actually knew quite a bit about philosophy and theology and St. Thomas and Thomistic philosophy and things like that. Anyway, so I just kind of tucked that in the back of my pocket and went back home and visited them a couple of times, but I still had my eyes set on the Dominicans, until at one point one of my friends said, listen, what are you doing? You come back from the sisters in DC so happy, so joyful. What are you looking for? What else are you looking for? Why don't you enter with them? Because I don't want to be a missionary.
What did you want to do? Be a teacher?
Yeah. So, I mean, at that point, I was getting further along in my college career, and I was really interested in the Catholic response to modern philosophy.
Oh, okay.
So modern philosophy really did a number to our culture.
Yeah.
Really bad number to our culture. And how do we respond? Do we just dig in our heels and say, let's go back to St. Thomas, let's go back, or is there a way to dialogue, or do we just go past it and we move forward? How does the truth, how do we respond even on a philosophical level to the problems of modern philosophy? So this was the philosophical question I was getting really interested in. And so, I wanted to be able to pursue that topic, and then, but within the context of a religious vocation, and potentially to teach, to teach philosophy or theology.
But the intellectual kind of life attracted you a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I saw our sisters, I was like, great, they have a good intellectual formation, but I don't really want to go to Tanzania. I don't know.
That's fair. It's not on the top 10 travel list.
Right, right. But God has his ways, and I realized that I was putting my desires ahead of his, and I wasn't really open to his. So when my friend said that, it kind of shook me a little bit, and I took that to prayer for a while, and realized, no, actually, I think he is calling me to be a missionary.
Wow.
And even that's not my initial desire. I think it's his desire for me, and so I need to say yes to this.
Wow.
Now, irony of all ironies, I'm back at Mount St. Mary's University teaching, and I work on a philosophy project, a translation project of a Thomistic philosopher who responds to the problems of modern philosophy.
Wow. Which is so cool. God's I know your heart. I know your dreams. I'm going to fulfill them.
Actually, I put those desires there in you first.
Yeah.
But I wanted you to let go of them so that I could fulfill them in the way that I want to.
Yeah. That's so cool. So did you enter right out of college?
So I did still have some student loans to take care of after college. So I went back home and I stayed with my parents because they let me stay for free.
Yeah.
Which was
I did
really
think after college. Yep. It's great.
It's really great. I was one of the lucky ones who was able to find a full-time position right afterwards. So I worked towards paying off my student loans. I worked for about a year and a half, and then I Still had student loans at that point, but I was able to receive a grant from a program called the Mater Ecclesia Fund for Vocations, and they assist young people who are trying to enter religious life or seminary who struggle with student loans. So they give you a grant, allows you to enter. They kind of take over your monthly payments while you discern in your religious order.
Oh, okay.
So
so you don't necessarily enter with zero debt per se.
Yeah, I mean they do. We transfer the name of the loans into their name, but the way it kind of works is they pay off your monthly dues, your monthly payments, until you profess final vows. Okay. And then once you profess final vows, they promise to pay off the whole within 5 years of that time.
Okay.
If you leave sometime in between, then you would just retake on your student debt.
Okay. You wouldn't then be in debt to them as well.
No, thanks be to God.
That's very generous.
Yeah, it's very, very generous. And really, they have a way to be able to like reduce the monthly payment to be as low as it possibly can, because you're in non-employment status. And so it does get pretty low. That's good, which gives you the freedom to discern without feeling guilty or feeling obligated to stay because somebody's paid my loans, and gives them like a little bit of protection too, that they don't just pay everybody's loans and then they leave religious life and go, whatever.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So were you teaching out of college then, or?
No. So after I graduated, I was a DRE in Portland for a year and a half.
Nice. Wow.
Well, what type of job you can really get with a philosophy?
I know. You got to work for the church, or which isn't bad, but no. It's not going to be like the highest
money maker by any means.
No, I always joke, like, if I had no moral compass, like, I think I would try to become a modern artist. Because you can make millions and you don't even have to be good.
Right. You just put a streak of paint on a wall.
And then you just have like a story about how it's like subversive to like something, and then you're just like, yeah. But I can't like, live a lie. So so you mentioned like your parents are a little like did they end up coming to your final or any of your professions, or?
They came to my final vows.
Yeah.
So that was really beautiful.
Was that in D.C.?
I was in D.C. in 2018.
Okay.
So I entered in 2011. They didn't come for my investiture of habit, first vows, any of the renewal of vows or anything like that. And I don't really blame them. It was they weren't protesting it by any means.
Sure.
But I just don't think they were ready. Yeah. It's so new. Come on, imagine from their perspective. Oh. God bless them. I mean,
it's like you're losing your daughter, really.
Yes.
It's not like she just gets married and, she has her own family. It's like, there's just a limit to how much they can see you, talk to you, and
precisely.
They don't, I don't know. They're like, do I have to call? I can't even call you your given name that we gave you. I mean, I can see how that's just, especially if you're not Catholic. I think it's hard. Even I know families who are Catholic who have daughters in religious life, and it's a suffering in a way.
It's a major sacrifice. It's a major sacrifice. Actually, my mom and I were having a nice conversation more recently about it, and she said she was reflecting on the time of me entering and kind of those first years, and she said, it was just so different from the life that I envisioned us having together.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult. I couldn't even just call you when I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like something just as simple and human as that. And I'm her only daughter. I have an older brother, but I'm her only daughter.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like I can look now and I can see. And I did understand it then too, but
Yeah. Are either of them, have they become Catholic or Christian or anything like that?
Still praying on that one.
Yeah. Okay.
But they've come a long ways, and they now ask me for prayers for people they know, and they'll talk about me to their coworkers or neighbors or things like that, and always positively. So I think if they didn't have a belief in God before, which I'm not sure, it wasn't clear to me, they do now.
Yeah.
I think through that struggle of like, you took my daughter.
Right.
Well,
right.
There's a you.
Right.
There's a you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's so cool. And your brother, is he?
My brother's a mountain man.
Oh, okay. We love a mountain man.
Good old Portland, you know?
Yeah.
Be who you want to be. Be weird. No, my mom was laughing. She said, you know, your dad and we really worked hard to like come out of poverty, to give you guys the life that we didn't have the opportunity to have, to give you the things that we didn't have the opportunity to have growing up. And my daughter's none of my son's a mountain man. Like, you guys both
took lives of poverty in different ways.
Yeah.
Wait, does your brother like live off the land? Like,
that's what he wants to do. He
Okay.
does have land. He's not exactly a mountain
Okay.
man, but that's what he wants to be. He has land. He's building his own house. He works as a carpenter.
Okay.
But like not immersed in the secularism of the world by any means.
Sure.
And that's why I told my mom, I said, listen, your values that you gave us are not to waste. You taught us what was truly important while giving us things that, you know, that we needed and even things we didn't need, materially speaking. But that shows that the values that you taught us were true and good, because those are the ones that we're clinging to.
Yeah.
And not going after false.
So true. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great. Wow. Oh, man, this has been a great conversation. Well, I guess, I mean, I don't know if there's a way for people to get in touch with you or your community, but is there any kind of, you know, contact information that you can give out for the sisters?
Sure, yeah. We have our website, which is ssvm.org, ssvmusa.org, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, ssvmusa.org. And on our website, it has a list of all our missions here in the United States, with email addresses and mailing address, phone number, things like that. So if anybody's close by and wants to get in contact with the sisters, or you want to look me up in Emmitsburg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go to Mount St. Mary's.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. I went to Iceland with some of your sisters a while back.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Iceland. Oh, yeah. You got to see one of our foreign missions out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was awesome. Yeah. Your sisters, like, they're like the Energizer bunnies. Like, they just go. I was like, I'm tired. I'm 23 years old, and these sisters are just like, go, go, go.
Sleep when you're dead.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, mother, right? Is it mother or sister? Sister, mother?
I'm always a sister. Sometimes I'm a mother. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Rose. God bless.